Hello and welcome to the Indian Writers Forum. Today we have with us Sevanti Ninan. This is part of the series that we've been curating or thinking around independent media in India. Thank you very much for your time. I wanted to begin with the beginnings. You set up the Hoot in 2001. Could you tell us why and how did it begin? And now it's been a fairly long time now. And what are the several say changes that might have come across in these years?
Yeah, so actually the Hoot was started at a time where there was concern about media, but in India, nobody writes about the media. So it's just a standard thing that the media is not a beat, and other media houses won't write about each other, particularly when print media was dominant. And they were all owned, the big papers were all owned by similar family ownership, and they would not carry stuff which about anything about aberrations or corruption or anything that was a media story about the media was not carried. In other countries, in the West, it's always been a more open thing of covering the media as a beat, but here it wasn't. So I started thinking, let's create a space where you can critique the media, look at it, raise issues.
But that was in 2001, and this is 2017, and it's been a fairly long time.
Well, because you still don't see until the websites came. You still don't have major. If there's a huge story, then yes, everybody will cover it. But if it's how you cover something, for instance, there are outstanding biases. I mean, who's going to write about it? All the TV columns tend to be on. All the columns tend to be on television. You don't critique fellow journalists. You don't write about what they're doing. That remains constant. And if there are corruption stories of the media or stuff like that, the new websites will pick it up. If an anchor quits, if there's a spat, you know, if it's an Arnab Goswami Barkhadat story, fine. But other issues, they still don't. I know that I could be doing it in a different format, maybe, but I do it through research and print, and I could be doing it in video. But the number of journalists in India who have a specialization in covering media long term is still very few.
You have also in your book researched extensively on the rise of the Hindi public sphere. And what I found interesting was how the rise of, say, new technologies, say the use of satellite, DTH, etc., helps create and build a new audience for which can read, consume news, etc. Now we see another step towards that with WhatsApp, etc. And you have in your articles, for instance, I was reading a very recent one on how the reporting of media raised communal tensions in Bengal, at least. Um, how do you think now, with another, like, say, feather to the cap for technology, say social media, how do you think that has affected this particular public sphere, which is not urban but non-urban, let me say?
The mobile and smartphones have created a wider catchment for social media, which goes down the income group to low income, middle income kind of rural categories. And they look for jobs on it. They do all kinds of things with it. They listen to music, they watch films. The first thing I discovered about mobiles is you go into a Bihar village and there'll be a little shop there which downloads a film into your mobile. So you're watching your movie on your mobile. That is old mobiles.
But so how does, like, the reporting of news, etc., change with this particular?
See, what I don't like is one way it's changed, especially on television, for instance, and with print also, is it's the easiest thing to think that the social media is the voice of the public because there's a lot more people, but then it's not as representative as it could be. So earlier, maybe I'm wrong, but I still feel that when you covered major events for television, elections, budget, you sent out people to get sound bites literally from the street. Now you think all the social media stuff that you're picking up is feedback. It's feedback only of certain categories of citizens. It gives you the semblance of getting the voice of the people, but it's really not going down to the bottom.
Hoot, I felt, was really focused on research and very extensive research. So why did you have?
And I keep thinking, I mean, the Hoot is also catering to researchers, a lot by doing these things. It's giving you a database. Uh, well, one is I'm made like that. I mean, I have an interest in research, media research. I find India doesn't have a media research center. And unlike other countries, our media departments are all teaching departments for the skill. You won't get your academics who are even doing enough research themselves. They're not encouraged to do it. In other countries, all the media departments, half their work has to be research and the other half is teaching. Here it's journalism teaching. It's not even. So I would love to see a Center for Media Studies or something. There is one with that name, which doesn't quite do the same thing. But in the absence of that, in any case, since I'm someone, I mean, I wrote a book on what TV was doing to the country in '95. I just liked doing research, and then I did the Hindi book. But I feel like a lot of the Hoot's audience, it doesn't have a wide, huge, but a lot of people are researchers and teachers. And if I go to a college, they will tell me that the teachers feel, the students and teachers use the site. Yeah. So I felt that I would want that.
As you mentioned previously in the interview, and I'd probably bring in one example maybe from this site. And I was reading your piece on Prashant Rahi, and I mean, the GN Sai Baba case, of course, did get a fair amount of media attention, and of course for very good reasons because of his disability, etc. Uh, but at the same time, there was one journalist, I think two journalists. No, there was one journalist only who has also been implicated in the same judgment and convicted in the same judgment. So why do you think that even when in cases where certain things do get highlighted, the media does not pick up, say, its own personnel who's also been accused and try and look at that? Because as far as when I was going through the judgment, I found that, I mean, even he was implicated for the same reasons of just possessing books and pamphlets, etc.
Basically, the media, when it's dealing with press freedom, would hone in on something that's happened. Lawyers attacking journalists in India Gate is fine, and then you have a protest and everything else. Much of the whatever you say about Prashant Rahi, the accusations are there, but you have to go into it, and someone has to talk about the case. But rural and small town media and language media doesn't get that attention. And a lot of the atrocities, attacks happen there. And so even when, what is his name, this last year, when this Rajdev Ranjan, the Hindustan is the Hindi paper of the Hindus sometimes, when he was killed. And now finally, but because it was a big group, it got a lot more. I mean, because the group itself wrote about it, it got a lot more. But that also happened in Siwan, I think, in Bihar. So there are lots of attacks that take place in the Mufassal areas. There have been 45 attacks this year on journalists. There have been threats, there have been deaths, 8 killings, but we don't know that all the killings are related to what they wrote or their journalism. But there's a lot happening, and it's all out at that district level, which is where they're vulnerable. That's the place where they're vulnerable.
Finally, we've also seen that, especially even with the killings of, say, rationalists and writers, which did get a fair amount of attention, protests, etc. We've seen that all of them work in these local areas. Like they've all had a constituency which is not an English-speaking urban constituency. But so, do you think that, and there's a fair amount of evidence to link this to extreme right-wing groups. So, do you also think that the extreme right-wing groups do see, like some part of it at least, they at least see journalism in vernacular languages as something that poses a threat to them?
Journalism, yes. I mean, in the sense that uh, totally, journalism, regional media is where people live. I mean, the media that caters to where the vast majority of this country is the regional language press and whatever, whether it's TV or whether or regional media. So if something appears there, it affects constituencies of BJP politicians also. I've always said that it could be a very small politician, but what appears in the regional language affects you where your electorate is concerned. So that's another reason why why they attack more viciously, maybe.
Thank you very much for your time. And thank you very much for watching.